bit up and down for ourselves. I think I think there's probably an element of a hangover from last season. Obviously that the highs of winning the league and having the two finals coming in to kind of get going again. We had a few guys missing as well, so it was a bit of a tough start to get going. But since that first couple of games, we've fairly gotten our results and gotten our team back, and we look now that we're starting to roll now. I think
Yeah,
we're starting to get the results, getting the results and getting the performances as well. It's one thing getting the results, but also getting the guys actually working for each other
yeah,
and and no starting to gel as well. A couple of new faces. So no,
yeah.
it's been good. It's been good the past few weeks, I must admit.
Oh, awesome! That's great. I think you're right there. It's the individual performances within the team, particularly once you've won something and you've been successful. It's one of those things. Um, what do you think contributed to the success last season? What was the sort of like the main thing that contributed to that? Because it was something special, really.
Yeah, one thing we looked at kind of, especially since we came back from COVID, was kind of our depth more than anything. We've always been a team, especially where we are, that you've got guys working offshore and all this stuff. So your team could change from week to week, and when you don't have the depth, you could one week you have three strong solid lines, and then the next week you're struggling to maybe put out a team. So depth was hugely important, and luckily we've had guys come in that it's one thing putting numbers on seats and into the team in the team sheet, but their actual quality as well. And and one thing we kind of said to the guys is just work our asses off, really. Like that is one thing, battle for everything, every line that goes out there. So we've been rolling pretty much four lines most of the last season, and no, it's you have four lines coming in waves of all different talents and all different styles. So it's very hard for teams to try and combat that when they're only coming at two, three lines. So that was one thing that was hugely beneficial for us, and it'll be the same going into this season as well.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously, it's quite a big club, really. When you look at kind of the draw, and like you say, there's a lot of people coming and going work-wise, working offshore. What do you think contributes to that success? Because obviously, you have a very good youth setup as well.
Yeah, it's not been an overnight thing for us, especially myself. I've been part of the club now for well, on and off, you could say, for 25 odd years. But probably the past, I would say, 10 years, we really put a lot of effort into kind of marketing ourselves as a club. It was hugely beneficial for us, especially after the rink had closed. There was no, it was one of those things where you have players and whatnot, they drift in and out. It's the same. It's a niche sport across the country. It's always tough to get guys. So when we started back up after the rink closure, it was a huge push for us as a club to start to just promote ourselves in the city. And like across the country, football's the biggest sport, and you maybe have your rugby teams in there as well. But in Scotland, there's football, and probably that's about it really. So we saw a huge kind of gap to say, look, we're a fun sport to watch. Let's market ourselves. Let's get ourselves out there somehow, some way, somehow, and get bums on seats. And we always thought if we got the bums on seats, they would stay. And it's one thing that's fortunately happened. And then us being able to generate for the senior team has then allowed us to, create a kind of gateway for juniors to come in at a relatively lower cost. It was always huge for us to push the seniors, push the kind of money coming in for then the juniors to be able, so we can attract all juniors to come through, and we're starting to see the benefit of that now. We're a good handful of guys that are coming through the junior setup that have been playing since they've been 9, 10 year olds, so it's good.
Yeah, that's a really important thing, and I think it's something that a lot of teams, I think all over the country, could really benefit from like learning from that scenario. Because for you guys, it's important. I think it's important for every team really to do that. What are some of the biggest challenges that kind of the team struggles with when it comes to bringing those players through from the youth.
Yeah, I think it is just no, with it being a niche sport, you've got one ice like in Aberdeen, especially you've got one ice rink for probably most cities. You've got one ice rink. No, you think of football, there's left, right, and centre. You've got a football pitch somewhere. Whereas with hockey, most places they have one ice rink, one pad. You get your 1 or 2 hours of ice time a week. If you're lucky, you might get 2 sessions. We're fortunate now that we can do that and we've pushed for that. So that's always going to be your challenge to get, and it's also not a cheap sport.
No,
It's it's not a cheap sport, and we're trying our best to try and make it as cheap as possible for parents because yeah, you're up and down the country here, there, and everywhere. Also try to pay for equipment, pay for ice. It's very challenging in that sense. Like I say, with football, you've got local leagues here, there, and everywhere. You could be 40 quid for a pair of boots and away they go, and that's it. Maybe a football strip, and that's it. But for hockey, obviously, it's a whole different ball game in that sense.
yeah, definitely on every level.
Yeah.
I mean, down where I'm based. Obviously, I'm not in Scotland, based on my accent. But we have a problem with facilities. Frankly, and I think this is a problem all over the place. Really, speaking to people up in Scotland, when I've spoken to before, lots of rink closures, things like that. How would you say, as someone who's kind of dealing with this on a day-to-day basis, how can we improve that scenario when it comes to rinks and things? Because obviously ice time is the key thing for juniors and for to improve the standard of the sport anyway. What can we do when it comes to that sort of stuff, do you think?
It's a tough one. It is a really tough. I think there's probably more in terms of across the sport we can do out with our ice rinks
Mhm.
and trying to promote into schools. It might be, you've got roller hockey out there, you've got ball hockey. I think there's probably ways we can probably go into schools and try and promote the sport because the more bodies we get into the sport, the more we can push for extra ice pads. But along those lines, it's not. I know it's not cheap to run ice rinks. It is definitely not cheap, and I won't. I'm not an ice rink kind of. I don't run the facility, so I can't say no how these places should run their facilities. But I think the more bodies we can get in, then the more we can push for no these facilities. But yeah, I think it's got to come from also all these senior teams being able to try and market themselves.
Yeah,
So you've got to find ways to get money into the sport. I think if senior teams probably market themselves a bit better, I think there probably is still a big gap there for. I th- no, you look at your North Americas and whatnot. They've got numerous sports, and yet they've got fans getting bums on seats. I think there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to do that and all across all our senior kind of teams. And hopefully, like you see the NIHL, especially they're picking up like quite a bit now. I can see a lot of British players dropping down and British players moving up as well. And hopefully that league can become a massive kind of like beacon for all our British players for somewhere for them for somewhere for them to strive to. And
yeah,
then hopefully, yeah, then the more we can push that side of things, hopefully the more eyes on the sport we can get.
yeah, 100%. Obviously, when we talk about the NIHL, then what about the SNL? How would you say the standard is? Is the standard improving as time goes on?
It's improved massively. I think over the course of probably 4 or 5 years, it's not been a huge jump, but yeah, the past 4 or 5 years is definitely massively improving. You can even see from like so the results whenever some of the Scottish teams are playing these NIHL one teams, there's not much in it at all. And from what I don't think there probably is much in it now in terms of the SNL and NIHL one. I don't think there's a huge amount in it. So I think the standard is probably there. If I'm honest, I think most teams in our league probably could compete in those leagues. I'm not sure about the south, but I know for the north, it's kind of the teams we're probably compared to more.
Yeah,
I think that's probably where the standard is now, and from what I've seen from some of these kids that are coming in, I think it's only going to get better.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think we have a really interesting point with ice hockey in this country, where if we keep going with this investing in the grassroots and keep doing what we're doing, we're going to see huge improvements. Particularly, like you say, with the NIHL, with like Solway stepping up. So that's a great beacon for Scottish hockey there. Which is a really nice thing. It's a really cool thing to see. Obviously, there was a lot of battling with getting them to go up, which is it's quite nice now that they've got it.
Yeah, it's amazing to see, especially for I know some of the our kind of younger kids that are coming through. It's I think that's definitely one of those places now they can look at and say, yeah, I can. That's where I kind of want to get to. I think for a lot of young kids coming up, the likes of elite, you're probably looking now. It's you're almost thinking, what's the point?
Yeah,
If I'm honest,
that's true.
and you look at some of those British kids that are coming through, and you go, "Oh, no, they're getting very minimal ice. I don't think that benefits any of them. Whereas within the NIHL, there's huge opportunities there, and I think them looking at the likes of Solway, especially in Scotland, looking at Solway, I think that's a great stepping stone.
Definitely, yeah. And what about for the Lynx? What's the long term future? Is there a plan? Do you have something in mind that you'd like to achieve with the Lynx, or not really? You just as it comes.
Yeah, it's a tough one because it's been kind of spoken about in the past. You know, the with the fans we get, and they're saying, "Oh, could they make the step up?" And at this point, I wonder if there's much point in that. I think for us as a club, you probably look at trying to somehow us increase our capacity in some way. I don't know whether that's we add to what we've got just now, or if there's a new facility, something along those lines. I think that's for us as a club, that would probably be our next step, and maybe looking at ways in which we can improve off ice, maybe an off ice kind of facility of some sort. I don't know, just so we can branch ourselves up again, and hopefully in some way that we can help the whole league.
Hmm.
I think that's a huge thing for, I think, at least for me, is to somehow, for us to create a Scottish league that people look at as, no, as your NIHL's in the same, in that sort of, not in the NHL, sorry, NHL one,
Yeah,
they start to speak about it in the same conversations rather than, I think we're probably looked down upon a little bit. And I don't think that's to anyone's, it's just unknown sort of thing more than anything. I don't think that's to anyone's actually looking down on us for a reason. I think it's just because we're up north and no one thinks about it as much,
yeah,
which is fair. But no, I think us as a club, I think yeah, just us keep building and hopefully we can get to a point where we have a kind of full squad of Aberdeen players within the senior team is probably where we'd really like to get to.
yeah. Definitely, I can imagine. I must admit, when I was kind of preparing, as you probably were, I don't prepare very well for these things, but like I'd rather have a conversation and try and learn something from somebody who knows, rather than like dodgy Wikipedia research. Like one thing that I did notice is you're very far away from, from teams, and I can imagine, in order to motivate teams to play, you have to be very good, in order to create that demand, which is tricky, I'd imagine.
Yeah, you could even for our players to want
Yeah,
to
yeah,
go
yeah,
down as well. No, a lot of these guys have day jobs, and
yeah,
no, if you're having to travel, even to Solway on a Sunday is it's a long distance when you've got to get up at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning on a Monday morning. So
yeah,
it's not the easiest for some guys, and yeah, for us to think about taking the step up, it's a lot of logistical thought has to go in, into it to, and I'm sure other clubs as well would be thinking the same thing if they had to go up to come up to Aberdeen.
It's true. It's true. If Solway were fighting,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Mate, thank you so much for coming on, Jordan. I really appreciate your time, mate.